How well do you truly know the people you welcome into your home? The ones you trust with your life, your comfort, your deepest vulnerabilities. Tonight, we delve into a story that peels back the veneer of normalcy to reveal a darkness so profound it will make your skin crawl. This isn't a tale of spectral apparitions or ancient curses, but of a horror far more intimate, far more insidious. The betrayal by a trusted hand. A slow, methodical descent into a living nightmare, orchestrated by someone you considered almost family. Meet Marta, the housekeeper. To her employers, the affluent and kindly Mr. and Mrs. Davies, she was a pillar of support, a constant, reliable presence for over a decade. But beneath her diligent exterior, a sinister plan was taking root. A plan to silence them, to trap them in their own bodies, fully conscious but utterly powerless. Get ready for the Silent Ward, a terrifying true account of how loving care twisted into a slow, poisonous descent into a state of conscious paralysis, and the almost unbelievable fight back from the edge of oblivion. What you are about to hear is a chilling reminder that the most terrifying monsters can wear the most familiar faces, lurking in the very heart of your sanctuary. The Davies lived a life many would envy. A beautiful home, successful careers, and a comfortable routine meticulously managed by Marta. For over a decade, Marta had been more than just staff. She was a confidant to Mrs. Davies, a reliable presence who knew every nook and cranny of their lives, from their daily habits to their financial arrangements. The trust was absolute, her loyalty unquestioned. But loyalty, it seems, had a price. Or perhaps it was merely a mask for a deep-seated resentment that festered within. Was it a chilling envy of their comfortable lifestyle? A perceived slight from years past, magnified by a distorted psyche? Or something far more disturbing, a desire for absolute control and financial gain? The why remained Marta's chilling secret. For a time, shrouded in a calculated silence, the change in the Davies was insidious, almost imperceptible at first, mimicking common ailments. Mr. Davies, a robust man in his late 50s, began experiencing debilitating fatigue, muscle weakness, and a persistent brain fog. Doctors initially waved it off as stress, perhaps early signs of aging. Then came Mrs. Davies, complaining of persistent, throbbing headaches, dizziness, and a strange, metallic taste that tainted her favorite jasmine tea. Tea Marta prepared for her every morning, a ritual of comfort. Marta, ever solicitous, would fuss over them, offering herbal remedies and soothing words, her brow furrowed with faux concern, even as her hands carefully measured out the undetectable, slow-acting toxins she'd begun to lace into their food and drink, day after agonizing day. The poison was chosen for its gradual, cumulative effect, designed to mimic natural decline, making diagnosis almost impossible. The true horror of their decline was its agonizing slowness, its creeping inevitability. Days blurred into weeks, then months. The vibrant couple withered. Their limbs grew heavy, their coordination faltered, their thoughts clouded. Yet their awareness remained. They'd look at each other, a silent terror passing between them, an unspoken question hanging heavy in the air. What is happening to us? Are we losing our minds? Medical consultations yielded no answers. only increasingly grave and confusing prognoses, often suggesting neurological degeneration or severe stress. All the while, Marta was there, the constant, seemingly caring presence, subtly but actively isolating them from concerned friends and distant family. Phone calls went unanswered. Visits were subtly discouraged with excuses of poor health or resting, and their affairs were managed by Marta with an unnerving, almost predatory efficiency. Then came the day neither could fight it anymore. First Mr. Davies, then, days later, Mrs. Davies succumbed to the creeping paralysis. They were diagnosed as being in a persistent vegetative state, a medical misdiagnosis that only deepened their private hell. Trapped, their minds, horrifyingly, remained islands of acute lucidity, fully aware within unresponsive bodies. They could hear Marta humming as she cleaned their home, felt her cold, clinical touch as she cared for them. Acutely aware of her complete control, her silent, triumphant reign over their lives and their once sacred home. The terror was unimaginable. To be a prisoner in one's own flesh, a silent witness to your captor's daily routine, her increasing arrogance. Marta began to live more freely, indulging in their luxuries, hosting friends, her mask of servitude slipping completely when she believed no one could truly see or hear their silent screams. But the human spirit, even when battered and poisoned to the brink of extinction, can be a stubborn, miraculous thing. Deep within the fog of their poisoned minds, Mrs. Davies began to fight. It started as a flicker, a vivid memory of her wedding day, a spark of defiance against the chemical chains binding her. She focused on a single finger, willing it to move, day after agonizing day, through sheer force of will. The struggle was monumental, invisible to the outside world, a silent, desperate rebellion playing out in the prison of her mind. Marta, confident in her victory, grew complacent, her meticulousness waning, her attention occasionally diverted by her new, comfortable life. Months had passed since the Davies had been diagnosed, a period during which Marta had settled comfortably into her role as the grieving, devoted caretaker to the outside world, while privately relishing her absolute control. One fateful afternoon, a new agency nurse, Sarah, was assigned to check on the Davies. Sarah was exceptionally observant, and something about Marta's demeanor, a little too possessive, a little too quick to dismiss any potential signs of awareness. A subtle evasiveness, when questioned about the Davies' past medical history, pricked her professional unease. Marta's exaggerated concern felt hollow, a performance. As Sarah performed a routine reflex test on Mrs. Davies, her trained eye caught it, the faintest, almost imperceptible twitch in her eyelid. Dismissed instantly by Marta as, "Just a spasm, dear, she does that sometimes," Sarah felt a jolt, a surge of professional intuition. Later, while Marta was momentarily distracted by a phone call in another room, Sarah leaned close to Mrs. Davies. Her voice a low, urgent whisper. "If you can hear me, Mrs. Davies, try to blink twice." After what felt like an eternity, a long, breathless moment of agonizing suspense, 2 slow, deliberate blinks. Hope, sharp and urgent, surged through Sarah, chilling her to the bone with the implications. Knowing she couldn't confront Marta directly without irrefutable proof, or worse, risking Mrs. Davies' life, Sarah acted with a calculated precision. She discreetly used her phone to record her next interaction, asking Mrs. Davies simple yes-no questions, to which she responded with those agonizingly slow, yet undeniably deliberate, blinks. The evidence was undeniable. A silent scream captured on her phone. When Sarah's shift ended, she didn't hesitate. She went straight to the authorities, presenting her compelling evidence and urgent plea. Marta, sensing something amiss, perhaps from Sarah's focused attention or a subtle change in the air, was becoming agitated. As police arrived, ticked off by Sarah's irrefutable evidence and her desperate warning, they found Marta in Mr. Davies' room, a syringe clutched in her hand. Its contents, a final, lethal dose. Her face was a mask of cold fury, her eyes wide with a desperate resolve. She was about to ensure her secrets remained buried forever. The Davies' fate recovery, their silent rebellion, had inadvertently signed Marta's own warrant. The nightmare was finally interrupted, but the battle for the Davies had just entered a new, arduous phase of survival and recovery. Marta was apprehended, her intricate web of deceit and cruelty finally exposed to the harsh light of justice. The sensational trial that followed laid bare her calculated malevolence, revealing the chilling details of her slow-acting poison and her methodical isolation of the Davies. While her ultimate motives remained shrouded in a chilling ambiguity, a mix of greed, resentment, and a profound psychological disorder, she was sentenced to a long, well-deserved prison term. But no sentence, no amount of time, could truly erase the profound physical and psychological scars she inflicted. For Mr. and Mrs. Davies, the road to recovery was excruciatingly long and torturous. Their bodies, ravaged by the poison, required extensive physical therapy to relearn basic motor functions. Their minds, haunted by the months of silent torment and the trauma of their conscious imprisonment, needed intensive psychological support to rebuild trust and process the unimaginable betrayal. Yet, against all odds, they did recover, a profound testament to their indomitable resilience and the timely intervention that saved them from Marta's final, desperate act. Their once beloved home, now a monument to their ordeal, was eventually sold, a necessary step to reclaim their peace. Their lives were irrevocably changed. The experience left them with a profound, harrowing understanding of human darkness, but also an unwavering appreciation for the strength of the human will to survive. They emerged not unscathed, for such an ordeal leaves permanent marks, but undeniably unbroken. Marta's story serves as a terrifying testament to the fact that evil doesn't always announce itself with thunder and lightning, with overt threats or monstrous appearances. Sometimes it whispers, it serves you tea, it smiles warmly, and it plots your demise from the very heart of your sanctuary, cloaked in the guise of care. So, the next time you offer your trust, the next time you welcome someone into the intimate spaces of your life, pause for a moment. Because sometimes, the hand that cares can also be the hand that conceals the deadliest poison. And true horror is often closer than you think. If this true story of chilling betrayal sent shivers down your spine, please show your support by hitting that like button, sharing it with fellow true crime enthusiasts and those who appreciate psychological horror. and subscribing for more terrifying tales from the shadows. Don't forget to ring the notification bell so you never miss an episode that will haunt your nights. What are your thoughts on Marta's motives? Do you believe she acted alone? Or was there something more? Let us know your theories and reflections in the comments below. Until next time, be wary of who you let in, because true horror is often closer than you think. Every parent cherishes the innocence of childhood, the vivid imagination that brings fantastical friends to life. We encourage it, celebrate it, often dismissing it as a whimsical phase. But what if that imaginary friend was real? What if it wasn't a product of a child's playful mind, but an unseen presence, an ancient, sorrowful entity lurking just beyond perception, desperate for connection, or perhaps something far more sinister? Tonight, we delve into the chilling true account of the Miller family, who moved into what they believed was their dream home, a picturesque Victorian house with a sprawling garden. Little did they know, it came with a terrifying resident, one only their young daughter Lily could see, and one that would soon demand more than just friendship. This isn't just a story about a haunted house. It's about a bond formed with something otherworldly, a connection that plunged a family into a nightmare they could barely comprehend, a psychological battle for their daughter's very soul. Get ready to question the very fabric of reality, because after this, you might never look at a child's imaginary friend the same way again. The setting is an old Victorian house, beautiful yet burdened with a history only just beginning to reveal itself, a history steeped in forgotten tragedy and lingering despair. The story begins with Sarah, David, and their energetic 6-year-old daughter Lily as they embrace a new chapter, moving into a charming, albeit aged, Victorian home nestled in a quiet, secluded town. The house possessed an undeniable beauty, with its intricate gingerbread trim, towering gables, and sprawling gardens, but a subtle, almost imperceptible oppressiveness hung in the air, a feeling easily dismissed as the natural chill of an old structure, or perhaps the lingering scent of damp wood and forgotten dust. Soon after settling in, Lily began talking about Ilera. Initially, Sarah and David found it endearing, a common coping mechanism for children adjusting to new surroundings. They'd often hear Lily in her room, conversing with an unseen playmate, her innocent voice filled with laughter and secrets. Lily described Ilera vividly, a girl her own height, with long, dark hair, wearing an old-fashioned, somewhat faded dress, and possessing strangely sad, yet captivating, sounds. Eyes that seemed to hold a profound, ancient sorrow. The parents chuckled, attributing it to Lily's wonderfully vivid imagination, perhaps a creative outlet for the loneliness of being an only child in a new place. However, the playful innocence slowly began to curdle into something unsettling. Small, inexplicable occurrences started. Lily's favorite teddy bear would vanish from her bed, only to reappear tucked neatly under her pillow, or her elaborate block towers would be subtly altered overnight, always with Lily insisting Ilara did it. Whispers, faint and indistinct, would sometimes drift from Lily's empty room, particularly when the house was quiet, like the rustling of old silk or the sigh of a forgotten breeze. Sarah would often find Lily in deep, one-sided conversations, her gaze fixed on an empty corner, recounting details of her day to Ilara, or listening intently as if receiving instructions. Each time, the parents would exchange glances, a sliver of unease growing, but they clung to the notion of a child's active fantasy, a comforting, if increasingly fragile, shield against the unknown. The escalation became more direct, more personal. Lily, once an open and bubbly child, grew withdrawn and secretive, especially when Ilara was mentioned. She began sharing strange secrets that Ilara had told her, intimate details about the house's past that Lily couldn't possibly have known, like the location of a hidden compartment in the old fireplace, or the exact spot where a beloved pet was buried in the garden. She also started relaying strange premonitions that would later come to pass in minor yet unnerving ways, like a sudden, unexpected storm or a forgotten errand that would suddenly become urgent. Objects around the house started to go missing more frequently, only to reappear in bizarre, illogical places. David's car keys in the refrigerator, Sarah's spectacles under Lily's pillow, or a family photo turned face down. A perpetual cold spot emerged in the living room, a chill that defied the season, and the roaring fireplace, often accompanied by the faint, sweet scent of old, withered roses. Lily, when questioned, would become fiercely defensive of Ilara, her little brows furrowing in protective anger, her eyes taking on an uncharacteristic hardness. "Ilara doesn't like it when you talk about her like that. She gets lonely when you don't believe her," she'd retort, an edge to her voice that wasn't Lily's own, a hint of something older, more resentful. The parents' unease solidified into genuine fear during one unnerving evening. Sarah was tidying Lily's room when she discovered an antique silver locket, intricately engraved with forgotten initials, nestled amongst Lily's trinkets. It was exquisite, clearly an heirloom, and certainly not theirs. It felt cold to the touch, despite the warmth of the room. When she asked Lily about it, the child simply said, "Ilara gave it to me. She said it was hers. She wants me to keep it safe." A cold dread settled over Sarah, a premonition of something deeply wrong. That night, David, disturbed by the persistent chill, the strange occurrences, and Lily's increasing oddness, began researching the house's history online, digging through local archives and old newspaper clippings. What he found sent shivers down his spine. The house had a tragic past. In the late 1800s, a young girl named Ilara Vance, the only survivor of a devastating house fire that claimed her entire family, had died within its very walls. An orphan, her fate a local tragedy. The records mentioned a beloved silver locket she always wore, a family heirloom, which was never found after the fire. The description matched the locket in Lily's possession perfectly. From that point, the manifestations became undeniable, escalating in frequency and intensity. Doors would slam shut with no breeze. Lights flickered erratically, and unexplained noises, faint, mournful cries, the creak of unseen footsteps ascending and descending the grand staircase, the distinct sound of a child humming an old, forgotten lullaby, filled the silent hours of the night. The sweet, cloying scent of old flowers would suddenly permeate rooms, particularly Lily's, only to vanish moments later, leaving behind a faint, metallic tang. The temperature drops became extreme, particularly around Lily, who now looked unnaturally pale, with dark circles under her eyes and distant. She rarely played with her other toys, her world seemingly consumed by Alara. She insisted Alara was lonely, that she just wanted a friend, and she understood Alara better than anyone. Her attachment to the spectral girl bordered on obsession, her personality subtly shifting, becoming more subdued, more compliant. Then came the games. Lily would describe Alara's new game, which always seemed unsettling, often involving a subtle element of danger or transgression. Once, Lily led them to the old, crumbling well in the backyard, her eyes glazed, claiming Alara wanted her to see what was inside, urging her to lean further over the crumbling edge. Another time, they found Lily attempting to hide sharp kitchen knives under her bed, claiming Alara thought it was a fun game, a way to surprise them. It became terrifyingly clear that Alara was not just a benign friend. She was influencing Lily, subtly pushing her towards dangerous actions, whispering dark suggestions into her innocent mind, testing boundaries and asserting a chilling control. The parents began to notice Lily mimicking Alara's described mannerisms, a certain tilt of the head, a peculiar way of holding her hands, a vacant stare that was utterly unlike their vibrant daughter. The breaking point arrived one night when Sarah and David were in their bedroom, trying to make sense of the escalating horror, debating whether to leave. From Lily's room, they distinctly heard a low, raspy, adult female voice whisper, "Lily, Lily, you're mine now." There was no doubt. It was not Lily's voice, nor was it either of theirs. It was ancient, filled with a possessive hunger. Overwhelmed, David set up audio recorders throughout the house, hoping to capture proof, or perhaps a rational explanation. The playback the next morning was harrowing. Disembodied whispers, guttural moans that sounded like profound sorrow mixed with rage, and the unmistakable sound of a child giggling, followed by the chilling phrase, repeated several times, "She's mine now. She's mine." Lily was no longer Lily. Her personality was fading, replaced by an eerie, hollow compliance. She was becoming a vessel for Alara's sorrow, her anger, and her desperate need to not be alone. The spectral friend was slowly, inexorably consuming their daughter. The terror reached its growing on a night that would forever be etched into the Millers' memories, a night of raw, primal fear. A piercing, blood-curdling scream tore through the silence, echoing from Lily's bedroom, a sound of pure, unadulterated agony and terror. Sarah and David burst through the door, their hearts hammering against their ribs, a cold dread seizing their very souls. The room was a maelstrom of unseen forces. The air was thick, heavy, suffocating, permeated by a chilling, cloying sweetness, like an overdose of funeral flowers. Lily was huddled in the far corner, her small body trembling uncontrollably, her eyes wide with unadulterated terror, fixed on an unseen point, as she sobbed, "Ilara's angry. She says I can never leave. She says I have to stay with her forever." Then it materialized. A translucent, ethereal form shimmered into existence near Lily's bed, the spectral figure of a young girl, exactly as Lily had described Alara, with long, dark hair, an old-fashioned dress, and those same hollow, sorrowful eyes, now burning with an ancient, unbearable rage and a desperate, possessive hunger. It was no longer a figment of imagination. It was a terrifying, tangible entity, its spectral hands reaching, longingly, desperately for Lily, its form flickering with raw, unrestrained emotion. The room erupted. Furniture crashed against walls with violent force, lamps shattered into 1,000 pieces, and the windows rattled violently, as if a hurricane raged within the confines of the room, threatening to tear it apart. A guttural, mournful wail, filled with an unimaginable sorrow and possessive fury, filled the air, reverberating through their very bones, a sound that seemed to tear at the fabric of reality itself. Sarah instinctively lunged, pulling Lily into her arms, away from the spectral reach, shielding her child with her own body. The entity shrieked again, a sound that pierced their souls, filled with desperation and a chilling sense of loss. David, paralyzed for a moment by the sheer horror, the overwhelming presence of the malevolent spirit, snapped back to reality and desperately tried to wrench open the jammed bedroom door. The spirit, enraged by their defiance, threw itself against the door, its desperate, longing cries for Lily echoing through the shaking house, a cacophony of despair and fury. The entire Victorian mansion seemed to groan in agony, its very foundation trembling under the weight of the spirit's boundless despair and wrath, as if the house itself was screaming. A bone-chilling cold sapped their strength, threatening to freeze them in place, to bind them to the horror. What the primal urge to protect Lily fueled their desperate struggle. With a final, agonizing shriek from the entity, a sound of pure, unadulterated defeat and fury, the door suddenly gave way. They tumbled out into the hallway, pulling Lily out of the suffocating, haunted room and into the cold, liberating night, leaving the terrifying friend and the house behind forever. The Miller family never returned to that house. They sold it hastily, at a significant loss, never breathing a word of the true horrors they experienced within its aged walls, fearing no one would believe them, or worse, that the truth would follow them. Lily slowly, painstakingly recovered. The constant nightmares faded, her color returned, and she began to engage with the world again, though a quiet solemnity now often shadowed her eyes. Yet, the trauma of Alara's chilling presence left an indelible mark. She rarely, if ever, speaks of her imaginary friend now, but sometimes Sarah catches her gazing distantly, a shiver running down her spine, a silent acknowledgement of the spectral playmate who had nearly claimed her daughter, a silent understanding of the thin veil between worlds. The old silver locket, a tangible, chilling piece of proof, remains locked away in a safe deposit box, a stark reminder of the spectral bond that almost destroyed their family, a cold, hard truth that defied all logic and reason. This story serves as a profound, terrifying warning. Some echoes from the past aren't just memories or quaint histories. They are lingering presences, desperately seeking connection, sometimes at the expense of the living, sometimes consuming them entirely. Do you still believe in simple, imaginary friends, products of innocent minds? What would you do if your child started talking to someone only they could see, someone who felt far too real, far too desperate, far too possessive to be a mere figment of innocent imagination? If this true haunting sent shivers down your spine, hit that like button to let us know. Share this terrifying tale with a friend who loves a good paranormal mystery, and subscribe to our channel for more bone-chilling true horror stories every week. Don't forget to ring the notification bell so you never miss an encounter with the unknown. or perhaps an encounter with a presence that refuses to be forgotten. Until next time, sleep tight, if you can. Have you ever gazed upon an expectant mother, her face radiant with the promise of new life, her hands instinctively cradling the precious miracle within? That profound sense of wonder, of pure, untainted creation? But what if that sacred vessel, that haven of burgeoning life, became a conduit for something else? Something ancient, malevolent, and utterly terrifying. Tonight's story is not for the faint of heart. It's a harrowing journey into the deepest shadows of motherhood. A chilling account that blurs the line between blessing and an insidious curse. We follow Emily and Michael, a young couple whose idyllic dreams of a perfect family are shattered by a paranormal presence that takes root where they least expect it, deep within Emily's own body. This isn't just a scary story. It's a plunge into a haunted pregnancy that will force you to question everything you thought you knew about the unknown, about the very essence of life itself. Are you prepared to confront the chilling truth of the evil in her womb? Because once you do, you might never look at the miracle of pregnancy the same way again. Steel your nerves, for the story of Emily's unholy conception begins now. Emily and Michael had built their life in a charming, slightly aged house nestled in a quiet suburban neighborhood in Ohio, the quintessential setting where dreams of white picket fences and happy families felt not just real, but tangible. When Emily discovered she was pregnant, their joy was boundless, an almost palpable energy that filled every room. They meticulously painted the nursery a soft, hopeful yellow, spent hours poring over tiny clothes, and playfully debated names, classic, strong names like Sarah if it was a girl, James if a boy. The first trimester unfolded as expected, the familiar waves of morning sickness, the pervasive fatigue, the usual anxieties that accompany first-time parenthood. Michael was a doting partner, tirelessly bringing her crackers in bed and gently rubbing her tired, aching feet. Everything seemed perfect, a picture of domestic bliss. Or so it seemed. The first truly unsettling sign emerged around the 14th week. Emily, a lifelong vegetarian with a deep-seated aversion to meat, developed an insatiable, almost predatory craving for raw meat. Not just rare steak, but truly raw, glistening, bloody cuts of beef. She'd find herself standing in front of the butcher's display, her gaze fixed, a hunger she couldn't wrap. Then came the whispers, faint at first, like the rustling of dry leaves just outside the window, even when the house was sealed tight. She'd hear them when she was utterly alone, often when her hands rested protectively on her subtly growing belly. They weren't words she could decipher, more like sibilant, guttural, ancient sounds that made the fine hairs on her arms stand on end. She desperately tried to ignore them, attributing them to stress, to overactive imagination, to the tumultuous cascade of pregnancy hormones. As the second trimester relentlessly progressed, the nursery, once a beacon of hope and anticipation, began to feel profoundly cold. Not merely a draft, but a bone-chilling, pervasive cold that no amount of heating could dispel. Toys they'd carefully chosen, a plush teddy bear, a colorful mobile designed to soothe, would sometimes be found in different places, or inexplicably turned to face the wall, as if manipulated by an unseen, malicious hand. Emily's nights became a torment of vivid, terrifying nightmares. She'd dream of a towering, shadowy figure with eyes that glowed with malevolent crimson light, its presence suffocating, its focus always, terrifyingly, on her womb. She'd bolt upright, screaming, drenched in a cold sweat, Michael holding her tightly, his own face etched with a worry that deepened with each passing night. Her very personality began to subtly shift, a chilling transformation. The once gentle and loving Emily became irritable, prone to sudden, inexplicable bursts of anger, sometimes even cruelty. She'd snap at Michael for the smallest, most trivial things, her eyes holding a flicker of something unfamiliar, something cold and distant that wasn't her. One evening, as Michael was gently massaging her swollen belly, he felt a distinct, jarring kick, harder, more forceful than any baby should be capable of at that stage. But what truly chilled him to the core was the sensation that immediately followed. It wasn't a simple kick, but more like something clawing from the inside, a desperate tearing motion. Emily gasped, her eyes wide with a terror that mirrored his own, a silent understanding passing between them that this was profoundly wrong. Medical checkups, frustratingly, revealed nothing abnormal. The ultrasounds consistently showed a healthy, developing fetus. A perfectly normal baby, Dr. Peterson would declare with a reassuring smile, utterly oblivious to the cold, creeping dread that had taken root in Emily's soul. But sometimes, Emily swore she saw something on the grainy screen, a fleeting shadow behind the baby's form, a brief, malevolent flicker in its tiny, developing eyes that was undeniably not quite human. Michael, a man grounded in science and logic, found himself utterly lost, adrift in a sea of the inexplicable. He began researching online, typing in desperate, frantic queries: paranormal pregnancy, evil spirits and unborn children, haunted womb. Most results were fictional stories, fantastical tales, but some obscure forums spoke of ancient entities, generational curses, and insidious demonic attachments. He cautiously suggested they seek help: a priest, a therapist, anyone who might offer an explanation, a solution. Emily, initially resistant, fearing she was losing her mind, finally, reluctantly, agreed. They sought out Father Thomas, an elderly priest known in their community for his quiet wisdom and his understanding of unconventional matters. He listened patiently, his expression growing graver, his eyes darkening with concern with each chilling detail they recounted. He visited their home, performing a solemn blessing, and gave Emily a small, worn crucifix to wear around her neck. For a few days, a fragile calm settled over the house. The oppressive cold in the nursery seemed to lessen, the whispers quieted to an almost imperceptible murmur. But it was a temporary reprieve, a cruel illusion. The entity, it seemed, was only angered, provoked by their attempt to banish it. The activity intensified with a terrifying vengeance. Objects would fly across rooms with violent force when Emily was agitated, as if hurled by an invisible hand. The whispers became clearer, sometimes forming a single, guttural, chilling word: mine. Emily grew visibly weaker, her skin pale and translucent, deep, bruised circles forming under her eyes. She felt like a prisoner in her own body, a tormented host to something malevolent that was systematically draining her life force. all while nourishing itself on her vitality. One night, Michael woke to find Emily standing by the nursery window, staring out into the impenetrable darkness, her hand resting possessively on her swollen belly. She was humming a discordant, tuneless melody, a sound that was ancient, deeply unsettling, and utterly devoid of human warmth. When he gently touched her shoulder, she turned slowly, and for a terrifying, heart-stopping moment, her eyes glowed with that same faint, malevolent red light from her nightmares. "It wants out, Michael," she whispered, her voice raspy, a chilling echo that was not entirely her own. "It's almost ready." The fear was no longer just about a difficult pregnancy. It had escalated into a desperate, primal struggle for survival. What unspeakable horror was truly growing inside Emily? And what would happen when it was finally, inevitably, born? The due date loomed like a grim, inescapable execution. Emily was a mere shadow of her former self, frail, translucent, and consumed by an unshakable, pervasive terror. The entire house felt like a pressure cooker of negative energy, a suffocating aura of dread. Father Thomas had advised them to go to the hospital early, but under no circumstances was Emily to be left alone. He feared the entity would attempt to fully seize control during the profound vulnerability of childbirth, a moment of ultimate transition. The labor pains began with a sudden, brutal intensity, far more agonizing than any doctor had prepared them for. As they frantically rushed to the hospital, a violent storm raged outside, mirroring the chaotic internal maelstrom within Emily. In the sterile confines of the delivery room, the fluorescent lights flickered ominously, casting dancing shadows. Nurses bustled with practiced efficiency. Doctors spoke in calm, measured tones, but an undeniable, electric tension permeated the very air. Emily screamed, not just from the excruciating physical pain, but from a primal, guttural fear that tore from her soul. Her eyes darted wildly around the room, seeing fleeting shadows coalesce in the corners, feeling the icy grip of the entity tightening around her, around the child that was tearing its way into the world. "It's coming!" a nurse suddenly shouted, her voice laced with urgency. Dr. Peterson positioned herself, her hands ready, her expression focused. Michael gripped Emily's hand, his knuckles white, his lips moving silently, muttering the desperate prayers Father Thomas had taught him. As Emily gave one final, agonizing, earth-shattering push, the room plunged into an abrupt, momentary darkness. The emergency lights flickered on, casting long, grotesque shadows that danced like specters. A baby's cry pierced the sudden, profound silence, a cry that sounded wrong. Not the healthy, vigorous wail of a newborn, but something thin, reedy, ancient, and almost mocking. A sound that seemed to carry a perverse triumph. Dr. Peterson held up the baby. In the dim, flickering emergency light, its features were hard to discern clearly. But Michael saw it. For a fraction of a second, before the nurse quickly swaddled the infant in a blanket, he saw its eyes. They weren't the unfocused, milky blue of a newborn. They were wide, unnervingly aware, and they glowed with a faint but unmistakable, malevolent crimson light. And on its tiny chest, just for a fleeting moment before being covered, he thought he saw a faint, dark mark, like a birthmark, but shaped with an intricate, ancient design, a symbol he'd seen in one of Father Thomas's old, forbidden books on demonic sigils. Emily lay panting, utterly exhausted, her body trembling. Is it okay?" she whispered, her voice a fragile thread of hope and terror. Before anyone could answer, the low, guttural chuckle seemed to emanate from the blanket-wrapped bundle, a sound no infant should be capable of making, a sound that chilled them to the bone. The temperature in the room plummeted, a sudden, icy wave. The crucifix Emily wore around her neck suddenly felt searingly hot against her skin, burning her. The evil wasn't just in her womb anymore. It was here. It was born. And it was waiting. What transpired in the harrowing days and weeks that followed is a story Emily and Michael rarely speak of, and only then in hushed, fearful tones, their voices barely above a whisper. The child whom they named Daniel, clinging to the desperate hope that a normal name could somehow anchor him to normalcy, was profoundly different. He rarely cried like other babies. But when he did, it sent inexplicable shivers down their spines. He watched them with an unnerving, intelligent gaze that was far too old, far too knowing for his tiny body. The paranormal activity in their home didn't cease. It merely shifted, intensifying and centering itself around Daniel's crib, his presence acting as a dark beacon. Father Thomas, his face etched with grim determination, performed an emergency rite, not quite a full exorcism, but a powerful blessing and binding ritual over the child and the house. It seemed to quell the overt, violent manifestations, pushing the entity into a dormant state, or perhaps just making it more subtle, more patient, more insidious. Emily and Michael live with a constant, gnawing fear, a pervasive dread that colors every moment of their lives. They love their son, or at least the innocent child they desperately believe is still somewhere within him, trapped alongside the encroaching darkness. But every time Daniel looks at them with those unsettlingly knowing eyes, every time a sudden, inexplicable cold spot drifts through a room, they are brutally reminded of the haunted pregnancy and the ancient evil that irrevocably entered their lives. They eventually moved from that house, seeking escape, but the feeling, the entity's faint, lingering signature, sometimes follows, a cold breath on the back of their necks. Did they truly escape it? Or is the evil in the womb now an evil in their home, biding its time, growing stronger with each passing day? It's a terrifying question that haunts their every waking moment and fuels their darkest, most profound nightmares. So the next time you see a pregnant woman, remember Emily's story and wonder, just for a moment, what truly lies beneath the surface. What unseen forces might be at play? What would you have done? And do you truly believe such true paranormal horrors are possible? If this chilling tale of paranormal horror sent shivers down your spine and left you questioning the unknown, please let us know in the comments below. Have you ever experienced a haunted feeling, an unexplained phenomena, or a chilling encounter with the supernatural? Don't forget to like this video, share it with fellow horror enthusiasts and those brave enough to face the darkness, and subscribe to the channel for more true scary stories, nightly horror tales, and bone-chilling encounters. Hit that notification bell so you never miss a spine-chilling episode. What kind of terrifying story do you want to hear next? Until next time, sleep tight, if you can. The darkness is always listening, and sometimes it's closer than you think. Do you ever wonder what truly haunts the darkest corners of a forest at midnight? Tonight, I'm taking you deep into the heart of the notorious Blackthorn Woods, where locals whisper of spirits that refuse to rest. Imagine tall, gnarled trees stretching overhead, their branches clawing at the moonlit sky like skeletal fingers. Every step you take stirs the dead leaves underfoot, and the silence presses in so tightly you can almost hear your own heartbeat. It began as a simple dare: trek into the Blackthorn Woods after sundown and capture proof of the paranormal. But as I stood at the forest's edge, flashlight in hand, I sensed something watching me, a presence older than the trees themselves. The air turned cold, though there was no wind. A distant, mournful whisper drifted through the canopy, sending a chill straight through my spine. In this scare-inducing true paranormal tale, you'll witness shadowy figures, hear inexplicable sounds, and experience a twist so shocking it will leave you questioning everything you think you know about life and death. Are you brave enough to follow me? Keep watching, because the woods are alive tonight, and they'll have a story to tell, a story that ends in terror. I drove to the outskirts of town as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in bruised purples and blood reds. The old oak sign marking Blackthorn Woods loomed ahead, its letters faded by decades of rain and wind. I parked on a gravel pull-off, grabbed my camera, a tripod, and a pocket full of batteries, determined to document whatever I encountered. My heart pounded in my chest, partly from excitement, partly from dread. The forest path was narrow and overgrown. Ivy and brambles formed tangled walls on either side, and low-hanging branches brushed my shoulders like warning arms. I flicked on my flashlight. Its beam sliced through the darkness, catching motes of dust that danced like tiny specters. Every few steps, I paused to listen. There was no breeze, yet the treetops creaked and groaned. Somewhere ahead, I heard a faint clicking sound, like dry bones knocking together. About half a mile in, I stumbled upon an abandoned campsite. A rusted lantern lay on its side, long since extinguished. Nearby, a campfire ring filled with cold ashes and charred skulls. Deer skulls, I hoped. But one skull caught my eye. Its empty sockets seemed to follow me. I set up my camera on the tripod and recorded a quick panorama. On playback, I noticed a faint blur hovering between two trees. I chalked it up to a camera flare at first. Deeper in, the trail forked. One path led uphill toward a rocky clearing rumored to be a burial ground. The other descended into a swamp, so thick with mist it looked like vapor from a witch's cauldron. I chose the swamp, drawn by the promise of stronger activity. As I descended, the mist swallowed the beam of my flashlight, and the world narrowed to the circle of light before me. Halfway down, I began to hear whispers, soft, urgent, pleading. I stopped the camera. The whispers faded. I listened. Silence. Then, unmistakable words. Leave, now. The voice was female, breathless, desperate. My rational mind argued, wind through reeds, echo from the ridge. But my heart knew better. I raised the camera again. The mist shifted and coalesced into a vague human shape, tall, cloaked, face obscured. I blinked. When I looked again, it was gone. Shaken, I pressed on. The ground became spongy and cold. My boots sank into soft mud with each step. I caught sight of footprints, bare, human, but impossibly large, twice the size of mine. They led away from the path, deeper into the swamp. Fear warred with curiosity. I followed them, camera rolling. The footprints ended at an ancient stone altar, half-sunken and covered in moss. Strange symbols were carved into its surface, runes I didn't recognize. I circled the altar, running my hand over the cold stone. The instant I touched it, the whispers returned, louder, closer. My breath caught. I spun around. The cloaked figure stood a few feet away, its face still hidden in shadow. Behind it, the forest was alive. Branches twisted and bent, reaching toward us. The air pulsated like a heartbeat, gathering every ounce of courage. I called out, "Who are you?" No answer, just the rasp of dead leaves. Then, a sudden flicker. The figure lowered its hood. Pale skin, hollow eyes, lips cracked in a silent scream. I stumbled back. My flashlight beam fell on a gnarled hand, bone white and skeletal. The camera slipped from my grasp and hit the mud with a splash. I froze, adrenaline surging. The spirit raised its arm and pointed behind me. I risked a glance. Something moved in the trees, a massive, dark shape. My mind screamed to run. My feet obeyed. I bolted back up the path, mud spraying from my boots, the mist swirling at my heels. Branches lashed at my face and arms as I raced uphill. I heard the spirit's wail behind me, a sound so filled with anguish it felt like ice in my veins. The swamp gave way to firmer ground, but the forest grew darker, almost as if the trees themselves were closing in. My flashlight flickered. I smacked it against my palm. It steadied. I splinted until I reached the fork. I turned toward the burial clearing, reasoning I might find a better vantage point there. Branches lashed at my face and arms as I raced uphill. I heard the spirit's wail behind me, a sound so filled with anguish it felt like ice in my veins. The swamp gave way to firmer ground, but the forest grew darker, almost as if the trees themselves were closing in. My flashlight flickered. I smacked it against my palm. It steadied. I sprinted until I reached the fork. I turned toward the burial clearing, reasoning I might find a better vantage point there. Breaking through the tree line, I stumbled into a moonlit clearing, dotted with rough-hewn headstones and toppled grave markers. The ground was carpeted in dead leaves. In the center stood a single, upright tombstone, fresh dirt piled at its base, an unmarked grave. The name, barely legible, read Evelyn Darrow, 1893 to 1915. I'd seen that name in the local archives, a young girl who vanished without a trace over a century ago. I lifted the camera, breath coming in ragged gasps. The spirit was there, kneeling by the grave, brushing away leaves with ghostly fingers. As I trained the lens on her, she looked up. Her eyes, empty sockets again, but now filled with sorrow, locked with mine. She mouthed one word: remember. Shaking, I stepped closer. Evelyn! The spirit's form flickered like a dying candle. Around the clearing, headstones began to crack, topple, and sink. The ground rumbled. I realized what remember meant. Her story had been forgotten. No one marked her grave. No one mourned her. The forest had become her prison. I grabbed my notebook and read from the archives. Evelyn Darrow, daughter of the town's founder, vanished on Midsummer's Eve. Search parties found only her footprints leading into these woods, and they never returned. At the entry, Evelyn Darrow, an editor's note scrawled in the margin read, "Curse the woods. Leave her be." Heart pounding, I whispered, "I remember you, Evelyn. I'll tell your story." The spirit rose, mist swirling at her feet. She reached out, hand trembling. I closed my eyes, compelled to touch her. The instant our hands met, a jolt of cold seared through me. I saw flashes, Evelyn's final moments, running from unseen horrors, begging for help, collapsing at the altar. Her spirit, bound by despair, doomed to wander. Tears welled in my eyes. I squeezed her hand. Rest now. A brilliant light exploded in the clearing, and Evelyn's form dissolved into motes of luminescence that drifted upward, joining the moonlight. The rumbling ceased. The forest stilled. I gathered my camera and notebook, hands shaking. On playback, the footage was pristine. Whispers captured on audio. The cloaked figure transforming into a grieving young girl, the altar carvings glowing faintly. Every moment was documented. But more than proof, I carried Evelyn's story in my heart. As I left the clearing, the mist receded, and the trees seemed to bow in farewell. The path out opened as if the forest itself guided me back. I stumbled into my car at dawn's first light, exhausted but alive. Just when I thought it was over, my phone buzzed with a notification. The Camera app had uploaded a final clip to the cloud. Footage I never recorded. With trembling fingers, I tapped play. The video showed me sleeping in my car, a faint silhouette hovering outside the passenger window. I blinked in disbelief. The figure tapped on the glass, leaving a handprint of frost. I shot awake and swung the door open. Nothing. No footprints in the dew-soaked grass. No lingering mist. Only the early morning chill. Heart hammering, I checked the timestamp. 3:15 a.m. The exact hour Evelyn had vanished. A single line of text scrolled beneath the video. "Thank you for remembering me." My blood ran cold. The words glowed on the screen, then faded into static. I slammed the phone shut and dropped it in my lap. Silence enveloped me, heavier than the night before. Outside, Blackthorn Woods stood serene, as if untouched by the horrors I'd faced. Yet I knew better. The forest and its spirits had marked me. They had accepted my promise. As I drove away, I glanced in the rearview mirror. For a heartbeat, I saw her, Evelyn, standing at the tree line, her figure translucent but unmistakable. She waved, a sad smile on her lips, then slipped back into the woods. I made my promise to Evelyn Darrow, and in doing so, freed her from a century of anguish. But her world remains woven into the fabric of Blackthorn Woods, a place where the living and the dead brush shoulders beneath the canopy. Now, when the wind sighs through the branches or the mist coils around your ankles, remember, you are not alone. True horror isn't always in jump scares or blood-curdling shrieks. It lives in the stories we forget, the souls we abandon, and the promises we break. Evelyn's spirit found rest only when someone dared to remember. Will you honor her memory if you venture into those woods? If you ever hear a whisper in the dark, urging you to leave, listen. But don't ignore it completely. Perhaps it's not a warning, but an invitation to uncover the truth, to give a voice to the voiceless, and to shine light on the things we fear most. Next time you drive past a haunted place or read a local legend, ask yourself, whose story has been lost to time? Because true ghosts are born not from death, but from the guilt of those who forgot. If you enjoyed this terrifying journey through the haunted Blackthorn Woods, please like, share, and subscribe for more true paranormal stories. Hit the bell icon so you never miss a spine-chilling episode. And let me know in the comments, what forgotten spirit would you want to bring home?